So it's just about as tall as it is wide. Just a good middle ground to start from. This is a lot of clay too. I'm going to get my thumb down and find center, or slightly off center.
Slightly off center?
Well, I mean, the end of my thumb is where the center point is. I don't want to be actually over the center of the piece, because then when it's coming around this way, your thumb's going to start cutting it, which is what happened there.
That was the spiral?
Yep, that's why I said you grab onto just one side of the piece.
Not directly center.
Exactly.
Okay,
just so the tip of my thumb is at center. And I'm pushing down. Now I'm really conscious with the rest of my hand here to keep this thing in check, because as you're pushing down, you know, it wants to start wiggling. So I am actually using, that's why my whole hand, I'm making as much contact as possible, yep, to get on there. Now of course this is deeper, so my hand is going to end up going from out here to down in. But I'm still using it consciously to keep everybody centered. I have my fingers on the outside checking to see if it's like, you know, wobbling out at all. So while the thumb is doing the work, the rest of the hand is just being mindful. All right. That looks pretty good. I'm going to use the middle finger of my right hand. And I'm actually, you notice I'm not pulling it all? All I'm doing is curling in like a little hook. And if you come closer, come stand like there. So you can see what's happening here? How there's actually a divot almost on the inside. And that gives my hand something to grip, so when I start to pull it, oh, there's that little wiggle. Can I borrow a little chunk of your clay?
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. Where are you, Peg? The bigger the clay you have, the more force you have to add to it, so the more, if it's off center on the pegs, it doesn't want to like cooperate with you. Okay, so I'm pulling out towards myself. I'm not actually doing any work with this hand, I'm just holding on to this.
What's interesting is I was trying to do the finger in and the other finger's out, and that was not working, so you've got them all in. But
I've got
using
them,
the force on the
because if you do this, I mean, there's not a lot of strength in one finger.
Yeah.
So by really, unlike squeezing my fingers in towards the center one and using the center one to pull, and it engages my whole hand.
And you said you're pulling towards yourself.
I'm pulling towards myself, like towards my belly button. Alright, now I'm going to try to make a cylinder, so I really don't want this to go, the bottom of my piece to be really wide, because then how could I get everything really tall in comparison? Also you can see that it's kind of wiggling. So I'm actually going to combine that pulling motion with my locked hand from that first position. So that way while I'm pulling towards myself, it's actually compressing, and you see how it's getting taller? Because if I'm just pulling towards myself, it's going to keep getting wider and wider. So by engaging this hand, I keep everything reeled in this way, and instead it's just compressing quite nicely. Of course, I got a little bit of wiggle because you can hear how my bat is jumping. All right. Clean the moisture out of the bottom. I take my rib and just get things compressed, because of course as I'm going, I'm going to add more moisture to the walls, and if that bottom isn't compressed, it's just going to sink right in. So I'm taking my rounded edge and going on the outside, because I can see that I kind of got to ease that down. You see how it's swooping in?
To make it more,
to make it
wider and flat at the bottom.
You got it. So I'm starting kind of out far, not actually touching down to my bottom. And from that point, I'm going to keep pushing down. So all my pressure is on the outside, and then you can see as I get farther down how it starts to connect with the entire surface of the bottom. And now everybody's together. So I used this rib actually as a guide as to like the half width of my entire bottom to make it match, so that this part was always in the center of my piece. There's no crossover. All right. So I'm going to purposefully make this wider so I can show you guys the choke move. So I'm trying to compress, and I'm doing one nice all the way from the bottom to the top. I'm not actually like getting my final width. I'm just just doing that one first pull after I've pulled out, just to get it kind of consistent and to feel where I'm at. All right, so for instance, sometimes when you guys do that, you end up out here. You're like, oh, I'm trying to make a cylinder, and every time you go up, it's just gonna keep getting wider and wider. So this is the choke move. Get it really wet on the outside, and you're gonna hold your fingers open. So you have 4 points of contact starting at your fingertips. And I'm just very gently holding from the outside and moving my way up, and you see how it's getting smaller?
Yeah.
You go very lightly, you know, barely any pressure at a time. You're just trying to be steady for the pot. Because if you try to push in too fast, I mean, you'll get a wider top, which will only make it harder to cinch in. So we just do little bits at a time. So now I've got a nice straight wall just from, you know, I matched sort of the thickness of my bottom and just brought it up with me. So if you get a shot of my fingers from the outside, you can see kind of what's happening there.
So are all fingers touching?
All fingers are touching. Well, I mean, all points of my thumb and my index finger are touching. These two. You can see where the clay is gathering up at my points of contact. I mean, your other fingers can touch, but they're not really doing any of the work.
So it shouldn't be doing it.
Shouldn't be.
See, if I did that, I think the thing was ripped out of whack, but you're bringing it back in.
Yep. It's just really slow, and it's more that I'm actually pressing up, because you see how this is flaring out? And by pulling up, I mean, the clay has nowhere to go but kind of fall into the shape of my hands. You can see it's also gotten taller at the same time. So once we get up here, we can kind of engage all of our whole hand and get that in there. Because the smaller your top is, even if you want to eventually go wider, it's just more controlled now. So I've really brought that whole shape in. You notice I did like 3, 4, 5 passes up. It's really gentle. And you want to make sure that your walls aren't too thin when you do this. Otherwise, if you go too fast, things will torque and will just leave. So this is about the thickness of my wall right now. It's a little less than an inch, and that's ideal. You want to do this before you actually do any pulls to control what's happening. So to keep it cylindrical, I was talking to Haley this past week because she came in to kind of do what we were doing in class today. When I'm now doing my thirds, pulling up in thirds, I'm going to be very conscious of not actually pushing at all from the inside. I'm going to be doing all my pushing from the outside, and I'm just going to keep my hand on the other side just to make sure I don't, you know, just go through the pot. So I have my top third here.
So you're thinning the walls.
I'm thinning the walls now, I'm pulling them up. So that top third, I had this weird little ridge on the inside, so I'm just staying still for a minute and letting it come together. I'm going to check my lip. Now that's pretty wonky, and every time I pull, that might get a little worse. And so there's something we can do with our needle tool to reel it back in. If you want to start a new video for the next step. So that was the choke video.